Frank Fritz, the beloved co-host of American Pickers, spent most of his life going across the country looking for secret treasures and making them into valuable items. But what many people didn't know was how much money he's really made over the course of his life. Frank's love for old things wasn't just a hobby, it helped him build a wealth that even his closest friends were shocked by. Once Frank stopped being the star of the show, his life got more difficult. Now that he's gone, his family is sad and proud of the life he's built. Come with us as we talk about the huge amount of money Frank left behind, which makes his family cry. Frank Fritz was taken to the hospital in 2022 after having a serious stroke that put him in critical condition. When everyone thought he was getting better, he got together with Mike Wolf, his co-host and friend. He passed away in September 2024, which was sad. According to Frank's death document, the official cause of death was a stroke caused by cerebral vascular disease. This was confirmed by Mike Wolf, who shared the sad news on Instagram. Aortic stenosis, a condition that makes the aortic valve of the heart small, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, a lung disease that makes it hard to breathe, were also factors. However, he had some hard times before he died that people thought cost him a lot of money. But that wasn't the case. His huge wealth was kept safe, but much to the surprise of many, it is said to have no will. Frank's death made his family sad, and not just because he was dead. It was also hard because of his wealth, lack of a will, and custody. All of these things didn't happen all at once. The story began a long time before he died. Frank was unable to take care of himself after having a serious stroke in 2022. He couldn't take care of himself or his money. His mental and physical health got worse to the point where his family and friends asked for custody. This means that Frank couldn't take care of his own personal and business matters. So a legal guardian was chosen to do it for him. The people around him did this in good faith to keep him safe and protect his property. After the petition, Frank's close friend was given the job of being his guardian. It was easy for him to do. He would take care of Frank's daily needs, make medical decisions, and make plans for where to live. At the same time, Frank's accounts were taken over by Midwest One Bank. This meant that the bank was in charge of his property, valuables, and bike collection, among other things. For a man who had made deals all over the country and thrived on being independent, being put under control was a painful loss of freedom. The bank had strict rules over the money he had worked so hard to get, but his family and friends didn't worry about the custody at all. It looks like Frank didn't leave behind a proper will before he died, which caused some problems. Intestacy laws say how assets are split when someone dies without leaving written directions. This means that his wealth will probably be given to his children before anyone else. In Iowa, where Frank lived, rules about dying without a will give priority to close family members. If Frank had kids, they would get their dad's money and property, and if not, the money would go to parents, brothers, or other close relatives who are still alive. Plus, that makes everyone ask one question: Frank, did you have a wife? Or kids? Sometime in 2021, it was said that Frank, who had been single for a long time, had finally gotten married. But you know what they say, rumors will stay rumors until proven false. Frank's relationship situation has been a mystery on American Pickers, mostly because he doesn't use social media. However, people began to think that Frank might be on his way to getting married after seeing him making out with a woman named Diane in public. On his now private Facebook page, he would sometimes post pictures of her. Frank also put up a picture of Diane, her daughter Paige, and Paige's daughter in 2016. When he called the baby his granddaughter in the post, it shocked his friend. Frank later explained that what he really meant was that Diane's family is his family, and it's great to be Grandpa Frank. His friends thought he had married in secret. Things took a different turn in 2021, though. His friends were glad that their favorite host had something going on. Frank talked about what happened behind the camera with Diane in an interview. Frank apparently wanted to marry Diane and even bought a house in Iowa to get ready for his new family. He found out that Diane was seeing someone else, which was bad. However, Diane denied the claims that she was seeing someone else, and the news ended their romance. So even though he wanted to start a family, the bond died. Frank is on his own. Basically, Frank and Diane broke up a long time before he died. This meant that Frank did not have a wife or children, and because of the intestacy laws, close relatives will be given priority if there is an immediate family. This probably doesn't reflect Frank's true beliefs. His family felt even worse about their loss because he didn't leave a will. They couldn't be sure of his exact wishes, so they had to guess how he would have liked his money to be split. His most valuable things, like his collection of antiques and bikes that are important to history, could be sold. The takeover made things even worse because Midwest One Bank still had control of his $1 million 0 cents assets, which made things take longer to get fixed. That's what a lot of people thought happened. A respectable news source, on the other hand, says that Frank filed his will with the court a year before he died, and his plans for the $6 million 0 cents fortune were accepted. In October 2023, Frank's lawyer helped him give the court his will so it could be kept safe. The person also said that a judge in Iowa looked over the will and agreed to it. But the will and other formal papers related to it stayed sealed. There were questions that Frank's family had that the signed will didn't answer. They didn't have a clear idea of how he planned to split his money. The secret was legal, but it made a situation that was already hard even worse by adding to the anger and sadness. Frank left behind a huge wealth, which may come as a surprise, but it shouldn't. Some people didn't know Frank Fritz until he worked with Mike Wolfe to start American Pickers. It was a long time ago, though, before Frank became a husband on TV. For 25 years, Frank was a fire engineer. At that point, he began to gather items that were connected to firemen and firehouses. His thought was easy. Since he bought them for $15 0 cents each and sold them for $475 0 cents, he thought he could make a living from it. Frank didn't just store valuable things to make himself rich, though. He was also saving money to buy bikes. Frank really liked bikes, especially ones that were one of a kind. So he had to get enough souvenirs and work part-time at Coast to Coast Hardware to save money for a Harley Davidson. At about that time, I also began collecting old and rare things. In 2002, he took a break from his job as a fire inspector to start an antique shop in Savannah, Illinois. It was called Frank Fritz Fanes. During his picking trips, he found unique things to sell and set up shop to sell them. The shop, which sold old toys and rare signs, became a big hit and made him even richer. Because of his good name and ability to find old things, he quickly became well known in Savannah. The capital, a show on the History Channel, saw him, and the rest is history. For Frank, his big break came when he became a co-host on American Pickers with Mike Wolfe. Frank makes up to $300,000 0 cents a season from the show, which is a big part of how rich he is now. Frank does more than just work on American Pickers. He also does speech work. It may also come as a surprise that he did voice work for an episode of American Dads in 2017. He was on a lot of other TV shows too, like American Restoration, Porn Stars, Rachel Ray's Show, and The Late Show with David Letterman. All of these things added a lot to his wealth. Frank showed his love and skill as an antiques hunter by writing books in addition to the TV shows. He was able to publish 2 books, How to Pick Vintage Motorcycles in 2013 and The American Picker's Guide to Picking in 2011. Since people really like Frank, you can be sure that his books will sell well and help him get rich. Frank didn't stop there, though. He also got into real estate and bought homes that made his business more valuable. One of his investments is a big house in Iowa that he is said to have bought for $130,000 0 cents in 2010. He then paid $25,000 0 cents for a home next door, bringing his total to $155,000 0 cents. The farmhouse's value has gone up a lot over the years, which has added to his wealth. Frank Fritz has a net worth of about $6 million, 0 cents, which came as a surprise to many of his family and friends. He has a lot of businesses and properties. Okay, don't get me wrong, Frank works hard and has been getting rich for a long time. A lot of people thought he lost it all because he was sick, though. Well, a reputable source says Frank spent about $30,000, 0 cents, a month on home health care before he died. There was trouble with Frank before his stroke, though. It all began after he quit American Pickers. Many people noticed that Frank lost weight right away after he stopped being on the show, which of course made them worry. Frank has been open about his Crohn's disease for a long time, an inflammatory bowel disease that lasts for a long time and causes stomach pain, fever, weight loss, and consequences like anemia and arthritis, but he didn't say that his weight loss was because of his illness. Instead, he said that it was because of the new way of life he was living. He said that he had been very careful about what he ate and eating well to keep the disease under control. In addition, Frank said that taking care of the plants at his home and doing the hard work helped him lose weight. All of these sound plausible, but it turned out that Frank's weight loss wasn't because of the hard work, but because of an addiction he had. Frank had trouble with the bottle in addition to his Crohn's disease. For driving while drunk, he was caught in 2017. Because he was arrested, he had to pay a fine and go through a review program and probation. Frank had been clean for a long time by 2021. His goal was to get over his problem, so he went to rehab for 77 days. Before this, he had lost both his mother and his grandpa to health problems caused by the same addiction. He probably had to think again in order to change his life. But it looks like Frank had a lot more problems than just addiction. Someone told me in 2021 that Frank had been having trouble paying the property taxes on his Iowa home. This shouldn't have been news for someone who supposedly makes over $300,000 0 cents a season on American Pickers, but it looks like his leaving the show hurt his income. Besides that, his medical bills may also be a big reason for the money problem. Frank's medical bills after surgery were said to be a huge $270,000, 0 cents a year. To break this down, Frank spends about $28,000 0 cents a month on bills, which includes $22,000 0 cents on home health care. Among the other costs are $1,250 0 cents for food, $850 0 cents for health insurance, $500 0 cents for transportation, $250 0 cents for clothes, and more. His monthly bills were crazy high for someone who didn't have a job and only made $60,000 0 cents a year from assets, but it looks like Frank had been having money problems for years. His business, FFF Holdings, shut down in 2017. In the background, the business license was taken away because the owners didn't file the necessary paperwork with the government. The business, which has been open since 2010, is no longer running, but his store, Fritz Finds, is still open. To make things even more complicated, Frank sold his home in Iowa in 2019 after splitting up with Diane, his ex-lover. A lot of people thought that the relationship would lead to marriage, but it ended when Diane accused Frank of being careless. But it wasn't just carelessness. Frank was also said to have cheated on his wife. Diane seeing Frank with another woman was a big part of why they broke up. Even though they made up after what happened, there was still no trust between them. Even though they were still trying to make up, their relationship took another hit when a firework set off in their house by accident. Diane says Frank lit a firework while drinking with a friend, and when it didn't work, he threw it away carelessly in an ashtray. Diane went to light a stick next to the ashtray, but she didn't know about the fireworks.